which means if you want to change, if you want to make a change in the file, what you need to do, you need to show the system that you are taking this file out from the system and you want to make some changes. So the process of taking the file out to make some changes is called check out. So when you check out the file, it can be done by different ways, but usually there is an option. You select the file in a file tree, and you either click a button check out, you know, pick it from the right mouse click menu. So but when you check the file out, the file is getting logged under your name, which means nobody else can take that file and make more changes. So what you do, you check out 1 file, 2 files, 5 files, depends on how many you need, and you work on those files. You change those files, and when you are ready with all your changes, let's say you run some unit tests, or you think you are done with your unit testing, what the process that you do is called check-in. Check-in is the process where you bring the files back to the system, and with every checkout, check-in, the version of the file is incremented by 1. So you get version plus 1. So if you checked out the file at version 1, once you check in, it becomes version 2. If it is version 5, if you check out and then check the file back in, it will become version 6. And the versioning is running individually on each file. Let's say, in this case, we have version 2, version 1, version 4. If you check out all those files and check them back in, this one becomes version 3, this becomes version 2, and this becomes version 5. So the purpose of this process is to make sure that developers do not step on each other's toes. And the same is done with test automation. That's a different topic for a different discussion, but still, when people develop test automation, they use the same software. So basically, they check out files, make some changes, and then check them back in. And that allows people to work sequentially on the files. What happens if, let's say, we have 5 developers and they all need this version 1, this file, right? File B. They all can check out files, but before you can check the files back in, so what happens, let's say everyone checked out the files on Monday, and they started working on it. And I was so good, I was, the fastest, so I made all my changes by Tuesday, and I checked the file back in. And let's say Michael was not so fast, and he made his changes only by Wednesday. And by the time he's trying to check in the file, the system, the version control software is telling him, Michael, the file had been changed. You cannot check in your file as is. You need to look at the changes and resolve it. And usually those tools provide you with the capabilities to see the differences between the files, so you can see the difference of your file, of the version that you have locally on your desktop with what was the previously submitted version. You can see the difference between the most previous version, so there are different ways to resolve the conflicts. So you need to make sure that the changes you're making do not override changes made by other people. Once you do that and resolve the file, you can safely check it in. So and this is how this second version and all subsequent versions of the software, all the subsequent builds are generated. Anything else?
Yeah, because I don't think anybody tells them, so it's nice.
Yeah, but this is just for your information. I don't think it is a very popular question on the internet. It is for developers, but it gives you a good understanding of how the software is developed. So,
I mean, since we talk about build,
yeah,
and it's a part of the building.
Yeah.
And one more thing I would add to that. So build, the words build and release are used as synonyms a lot.
Yeah, interchangeably.
Yeah,
True.
yeah. They might say release, they might say
Yeah,
build.
yeah, this is true. They also call it releases. Yeah, and say, okay, you will get a new release this week or that week or today.
And that is one of the positions in your bug reporting field. When you write a bug report, you point to the release
Or build number.
or build
Yeah.
number, because
Yeah.
otherwise you might not understand each other. I mean, developers will check it in one version, you write it in another version. So.
Yeah, and also some bugs are getting fixed on their own, so nobody makes any explicit fixes. But what happens, they were, there was some problem, they were fixing it, and then they saw, okay, this and this and this also needs to be fixed. So that's why it is important to put the build number in your bug report. So you can always go back and see, because some bugs may not be reproducible. Let's say 5 builds later, you run it and it runs fine, and nobody, fixed the bug. That means some changes were made that contributed to fixing that bug. So, which is also possible. That's why it is important to put the, build number in your bug report. So, what time is it? Okay, let's do 10 more minutes and then we'll have a break. So, any questions about builds and how, this bug fixing process works and okay, how we get the fixes? We are clear, right? How we get the fixes. Now back to our test cases. And these are our test cases.
I'm sorry, when you mentioned the systems where the bug is coming to the owner of the problem,
Yes.
So who will assign the priority to the bug?
Oh, good question. Who assigns the priority to the bug when it goes to the owner? It depends. In many companies, they do so-called bug triaging, which is a process when the project team gets together, developers, PA, project management, and they try to prioritize all the bugs. And product management looks at the bugs from the product management perspective. QAs have their say usually, and they can say, okay, these are the priorities that we think should be put. Developers have their own opinions. In some companies, it's just the QA person who logs the bugs, and then you use the best of your judgment to provide the priority and severity of the bug. And clearly, if you have 500 test cases to run, and you try to install the system, the program, and it crashes, you cannot even install, this is P0, no questions asked. So if no testing progress can be done, those bugs are all P1s, I mean the highest priority that your company is using. It can be P1 to P4 or P0 to P5, depends on the scale. But you have to, use your judgment, the best of your judgment when you log the bugs. So now let's look at the timeline. We have 1,000 test cases, 5 people, 5 weeks of execution time. Let's say we started, hypothetically, of course, on January 1st. 5 weeks will bring us somewhere to February, let's say 7th, 6th, for simplicity 7th. This is our first cycle. And this is where we try to execute the 1,000 test cases, or as much as we can. And this is where test cases are very useful again, because believe me, as soon as you start your testing activities, project management, development manager, product managers will be popping up in your queue every other day, asking you the same question. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we ready to release? And you will be sitting there in your queue with your hands full of bugs and saying, no, we are not ready. But how can you prove to other people that the product is not ready to be released? You can show them bugs, you can sing some songs, you can show some dance, but until you have very solid data in your hands, oftentimes you cannot prove that the software is not ready to be released. Test cases are very handy when you need to prove something. Let's say you have 1,000 test cases, and when you start your cycle, your execution rate is of course number of test cases executed to number of test cases total. This is your execution rate. When you start your test cycle, what is your execution rate?
0.
0, right? When you started, it is 0. So here you have 0 execution rate. Your goal eventually is to reach 100% of execution, right? So your execution rate should become 100% at some point. But believe me, if it is your first cycle, you will never reach 100% execution unless we live in the future and it is an ideal world, you will never reach 100% execution by the end of the first cycle. Every day, you will be running your test cases. And by the end of every day, and by the end of each week, you can easily get this data. So your execution rate will be changing every day and every week. So let's say we have 5 weeks, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 weeks. So by the end of each week, or in the middle of each week, doesn't matter, or every day, by the end of every day, it doesn't matter when, but your manager will be looking at the test data that you guys will provide, you as a team, as a QA team, and he will look at this execution rate. And he will try to, as I said, we will never reach 100% of the first cycle, but we should get as much execution done as possible. How much execution we'll be able to do depends on the size of the software, on the complexity of the software, and on the number of bugs found. So the execution rate may fluctuate in a very broad range. In addition to execution rate, there is another piece of data that we will need. It is a pass rate. Pass rate, it is number, of course it is in percentage, right? So pass rate, it is number of test cases passed divided by number of test cases. Different companies, I've seen different companies using different data here. Some companies use to number of test cases executed, and some companies use it to divide it by total number of test cases. Eventually, all these numbers, will come to the same statistics, and it will give you the same trend. It's just these two numbers that may be calculated differently. But at the end, it's not too much difference, because you will see the trend right away, no matter which one you use. So the pass rate is a very important number, because pass rate will tell you for the executed test cases, for the features that you've already tested, what is the quality of those features. This is how you can quantitate the quality by using the number of test cases, right? Because if you don't have any test cases, how can you quantitate? How can you tell, okay, our pass rate is 60%. How do you get those 60%? You cannot. You cannot say, oh, you know what, so I was testing yesterday and I feel like we are good at 50% pass rate. This is not the exact number. And quality assurance is quality assurance. You have to justify your numbers. So this is how you do it. So you calculate the pass rate and you calculate your execution rate. So on a weekly or daily or monthly basis, it depends on what your cycle is. But in our example, let's say it is a weekly basis. So you need to provide these two numbers, execution rate and pass rate. And let's say this is your first cycle, and your execution rate was 50%, and your pass rate was, let's say, 50%. Is it good or bad? It is what it is, right? So this is the first cycle. It's too bad we didn't execute more than 50%, but it's good we executed at least 50%, because I've been in situations where you cannot do anything at all, you cannot even install, whereby, you spend first 2 or 3 weeks just struggling to install and trying to push, for some bug fixes that will let you to install the software. So if you made 50% of execution and among those 50, you have 50% pass rate, you are, in this state. This is your starting point. What you need to look further is the trend, actually where your numbers go. So in your second cycle, and since it is 50 and 50, we are not ready to release. I think you agree with me, right? We only tested half of the features, and among those half, only half of it is working. So from overall number of features, only 25% is functioning as designed. Anything else is either not tested and quality is not even determined, or quality was determined and it was found to be faulty. So we are not ready to release. So in your second cycle, which you start right away, you have another 5 weeks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And let's say we end up in March 14th. In your second cycle, let's say you have these numbers. You have 60% execution rate and 20% pass rate out of what was executed. Is this the right trend to see? No. If you see this trend, that means something is very wrong with either development or the process or something else. You need to raise your, and believe me, you don't need to wait till the end of the cycle to see that. Because as I said, those data will be gathered on a weekly or daily basis. And as soon as we see, I mean, it's not like every day you can understand these numbers. It may fluctuate, depends on how much you've executed and how many test cases pass or fail. But by the end of, let's say, in the middle of the cycle, you will have this picture. So as soon as you or manager, and usually these managers work or QA leads work to raise the flag and say, guys, we are not going in the right direction. So if you see this, then the issues need to be highlighted, and then what needs to be done? Something needs to be done. So either developers' process need to be re-evaluated, or the design may be very fragile, may not be the right design. So this is a good time to revise the design, to review the process, to understand the reasons of why we are getting this trend need to be root caused. And once you have the root cause needs to be fixed, and only then we can move further. On the other hand, if you see this data, are you on the right trend? Yes, we are. We are not ready to release yet because we only access the quality of 60% of our features. But at least, if you calculate the overall, this is the overall pass rate, right? So 50% out of 50 executed means 25% overall. So 70 out of 60 gives us 42%. So our pass rate is increasing. So, but these are the numbers that you can show to project managers or development managers or whoever comes to you with this question, are you there yet? So, and when you show them these numbers, you're saying, okay, we cannot release with this quality. So we need to run more tests and more cycles, and you can go with the cycles until you reach the desired quality. So what is the desired quality level depends on the company, on the project. Usually, the execution rate, the targeted execution rate is 95 to 100%. Of course, 100 is ideal, but there may be some low priority test cases that you may not have time or resources to run. And your pass rate, ideally, should be within 90 to 95 to 100%.
There is a typical interview question, which sounds like, how would you determine it's time to stop testing, it's done? Because the very common answer is, well, if I see the quality is not improving anymore, okay, so then it makes no sense to keep testing. And so in your case, you come with some numbers.
Yes. So this is very important. You can quantitate the quality. But how can you say that the quality is not improving, right? Even to say that, you need to have some numbers.
You might say number of critical bugs in bug-taking system unfixed.
But how can you ensure that the same set of cases is run over and over again, right? So
because it keeps happening for a while. So you say, it's not improving. So.
Yeah. You can look at the bug numbers as well. But again, when you look at these numbers, you have a very clear proof, that all of the features were tested, and at least most of the features, right? If you are at 95%, and most of the test cases, majority of the test cases is passing. In our company where I am right now, we have 100% execution. The requirement is 100% execution rate, and pass rate should be 97%. It is a very high quality standard, but this is what it is in my company. Again, we cannot look at those numbers only, because those 3% of the test cases which are failing cannot be critical test cases, right? If you have critical bugs, let's say if customers accidentally hit escape or some symbol on a keyboard, and server loses connection, database goes down, those are critical bugs which are unacceptable to have in those 3%. So these 3% or 5% or whatever this percentage is are left for minor non-critical defects. There may be some cosmetical defects. Okay, the fonts are different in all the screens. So let's say in these screens you have Times New Roman, in some other screens you have Arial, somewhere else you have Courier. Those are irritating bugs. They don't make very good impression on the user, but if development did not have time to fix it, you can still live with it. Those can be fixed in the maintenance releases, right? Those do not impact, those are irritating, but those do not impact users' experience. So what I'm saying, when you're saying whether we are ready to release or not, we need to look at the execution rate, pass rate, and we need to analyze the bugs that contribute to the failures, if the pass rate is less than 100%. And believe me, you will never have pass rate of 100%. If you have pass rate of 100%, something is wrong with your tests. Believe me. Okay guys, let's have a break for like 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and do the exercise.